So we will introduce that legislation and we will go into government, pledge to bring about some massive changes. At the moment, we've got Boris Johnson as possibly the longest or shortest ever serving Prime Minister in this country. Yes. And when Parliament returns, we will table, in my name, a motion of no confidence. And I say to all other parties who say they want to stop a no-deal exit from the European Union with all the consequences that follow from that, if you believe in what you are saying, then you must support my motion of no confidence in this government. And the purpose of that government would be to ensure the people of this country have a choice of who their government should be, and have a choice about their future relations with the rest of the world. Unless we stop Johnson in what he's doing now, it's a headlong rush by Boris Johnson into the arms of Donald Trump and a trade agreement with the USA and all the deregulation and investor protection that will follow from that. I am not prepared to stand by and allow our economy to be destroyed on the altar of American big business. So we will do that as soon as we can in September when Parliament returns. Because I am very determined that the message of people in this country who've had enough of the poverty, the inequality, the injustice, the hardships caused by the political decision taken in 2010 to impose austerity on the people of this country. And I say to those parties, including the Liberal Democrats, that voted for benefit cuts, that voted for cuts to the disabled, that voted for the austerity that's been imposed on local authorities all over this country, and the frozen wages and the poverty that goes with it. Think on. We are going to fight an election campaign on a policy of total opposition to austerity and investment in the future of the people of this country to achieve better standards of living and more hope in society. Fundamentally, Britain is a very unequal society. And when I was outside Bolton Town Hall this morning, I was asked a question by a journalist, what was my reaction to Sajid Javid's latest proposals on tax reform? I said, well, as far as I understand it, Sajid Javid's idea of tax reform is to reduce what he calls euphemistically the tax burden on the very richest and the biggest corporations in order that they may do better, and somehow or other the rest of us are supposed to be pleased about it. I simply say this to Sajid Javid and to the Tories: you have created the most indescribable levels of inequality in our society. The gap is getting bigger, the poverty is getting worse, and when we have millions of children living in poverty, we have underfunded schools, underfunded hospitals, underfunded care system, homeless people, overcrowded, and young people denied decent wages. That is what austerity has brought. It's time to end it. And it's time to give hope to people. Think of all the areas that need to be changed. Think of what could and should and must be done in education. Education is something we all believe in. Education became free initially in the 1870s for those that campaigned for it. And our current education system is getting closed in a bit. Under fours, education often has to be paid for, nursery places. Post-school education often has to be paid for, usually has to be paid for by the individual. Gradually, we've changed education from being a right into a commodity. We will establish a national education service that will be dedicated to ensuring that education is a right, not a privilege, and not a commodity to be bought and sold. And if you think about it, the inequality begins at the very earliest ages. Inequality begins almost at birth. A child growing up in an overcrowded, poor household in a poor part of Britain, unable to access nursery education, an underfunded primary school, and so on, is less likely to achieve what they could in their life than those growing up in a more affluent area. And so, our pledge is we will bring in free nursery places for all 2 to 4-year-olds and 30 hours a week. We will properly fund all primary schools, and we will ensure that all children in primary schools get a free school meal eaten together all the time they're in primary school. And we will end the indignity of head teachers having to collect money in order for the school to survive. But what we will also do is look at the way in which our system works. Children are wonderful, creative, imaginative. There's music, there's poetry, there's joy, there's imagination in every child. And somewhere along the line, we don't do enough to nurture and help them to develop that. So, we will have a pupil arts premium which will ensure every child in every school gets a chance to learn a musical instrument and learn the artistic endeavours that they've got. Because a society that's creative in artistic and poetry and music is also creative in science, in maths, in so many other areas. It's about unleashing the imagination that's in us all. And we will end, as we promised in the last general election, the principle of charging tuition fees in universities by raising corporation tax in order to deal with that. And we will ensure there is real equality of value between those that choose good quality vocational education just as much as those that choose academic education. A society needs all of those skills, not to look down on one or the other offering. And so we will also refund properly adult education, so that those that want to pursue some new pursuit, new subject, new ideas, will get the chance to do it, and we as a community will support them in doing that. John McDonnell, I think, has done an incredible job as our Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer since he was appointed to that position in 2015. He's changed the nature of the debate into one of opposition to austerity and in favour of investment within our society. John has proposed, and it will be in our manifesto, that we set up a National Investment Bank, that we have regional transformation funds in each English region and in Scotland and in Wales. And we will end the unbelievable levels of inequality in investment between London and the South East, the North West and the North East of England. Investment in public transport and in infrastructure for a crossrail to the north. That degree of inequality cannot go on within our society. It's a Labour government that will work for every part of this country. Those communities that were attacked during the miners' strike by Thatcher, that denied any investment, that have had inadequate employment opportunities, have had poor quality, low paid jobs, have had 0 hours contract jobs imposed upon them. A Labour government will do things very differently by investing in communities, by ending 0 hours contract work, by repealing the Trade Union Act, by giving people rights at work to be members of a trade union and the right of unions to access to workers in order to join them, because it is also about rights at work. This afternoon we were talking with some young people in one of the workshops we had about the difficulties they had in forming and joining a trade union. So I salute those unions that are organising in Amazon, in McDonald's, that are organising Deliveroo workers and all the other groups in the economy who work very hard, very insecure work, often very badly paid, sometimes quite dangerous work they're doing. They too have rights. The self-employed have rights. We will have a completely new approach, and Laura Pidcock is doing a fantastic job as our Shadow Minister of Labour, and in government it will be a new government department. I'm determined that there will be proper employment opportunities in Britain. On May the 1st, I proposed in Parliament that we declare, this country declares a climate emergency. I put that forward on behalf of the Labour Party. The Tories didn't dare oppose it, and it was carried. I want to say a big thank you to Becky Long-Bailey, Sue Hayman and Barry Gardner for the work they've done in promoting this. We cannot go on polluting this planet the way we are. We cannot go on observing the extinction of one species after another, watching soil degradation in our farms and not pretend at some point we are all going to be impacted very badly on it. No longer can we go on also just assuming that pollution happens in big cities and you can just move somewhere else and get away from it. You can't. There's an inequality here. Children living alongside major roads, shorter life expectancy, less lung capacity than others. People living in polluted areas have a shorter life expectancy in general. The poorest people in the poorest cities around the world, particularly in South Asia, lead very short lives because of those levels of pollution. We cannot go on like this. So our emergency declaration is about a policy change direction for every single government department. It is also about opportunities. Opportunities of a green industrial revolution that will create, I believe, 400,000 jobs in clean green energy, will support the Swansea Bay Barrage, the Mersey Barrage, and above all, will support a clean green economy. It is about how we change the way in which we approach our planet and our world. And I am absolutely determined that we will be able to carry this through. So we won't be holding hands with Donald Trump and walking away from the Paris climate change accord. We'll be working with others around the world to achieve that sense of unity around the world. Our government will change an awful lot of things. We'll bring rail, mail and water into public ownership. We'll give workers rights in order to organise at their workplace and to form cooperatives. But above all, we want to create a society that's inclusive and vibrant. For too long, the neoliberal economists have told us that the next generation is going to get less from the public realm than the previous generation. So they say to young people, get ready, you might need to pay for your health care, you might need to pay for your education, you might need to pay for your pension, all sorts of things which in effect are a retreat of the public from the provision of services and into private hands and individuals. Well, for individuals who've got means, that's fine, but for the majority, that is not fine at all. Surely our principle is about the strength of a community doing things together and achieving things together. So, our government will be investing in all people. But our government will also play its part on the human endeavour on the world stage. I have not spent my life campaigning for peace, justice and human rights to go into government to do anything but continuing to campaign for peace, justice and human rights around the world. Look at the refugee crisis the world faces. People from two backgrounds who had to leave their own society because of war, because of human rights abuse, because of discrimination, or because of environmental degradation. They're human beings just like us. They're human beings who happen to find themselves in a refugee camp in Jordan, in Syria, in Lebanon, Mexico, many other countries around the world where people find themselves as refugees. And you know what? They're human beings just like every one of us in this hall this evening. And we should treat them as such. So it does mean addressing the causes of it. And I want our government to be part of recognising that the 65 million people around the world who are labelled as refugees or internally displaced have rights too. Otherwise, things get worse. Things get much, much worse. So let's have an approach to the world which is about peace, justice and human rights, and is about investment in our future. Now, our party was founded by far-sighted and brave people. Our movement comes from the struggles of ordinary people. Those that stood for land rights, those that stood for workers' rights in industrial Britain, and those that made the most amazing and heroic attempts at solidarity with others in struggle. Never forget, it was the Lancashire cotton workers who stood in solidarity with the slaves in the United States by refusing to handle cotton canning. Those acts of solidarity helped in many ways. And the celebration of the 200 years since Peterloo, in which 2,000 people went from Bolton to join in that demonstration, demonstrates just what that solidarity was about and how crucial that event was. Our movement is a movement of people. And so we challenge this government, we take this government on. But above all, we will do that and achieve the victory we desire in an election by our unity as a movement. Our unity to achieve decency in our society, our unity to deal with the mental health crisis and the healthcare crisis, our unity to deal with the housing crisis, our unity to give hope to all young people in our society, our unity to bring about that decent and better world. So whatever attacks are thrown at us as a movement, as a party, or at individuals, think behind the motive of those that are attacking us. They want to divide us. They will not succeed. They will not succeed because we are determined to go into an election campaign in which you unite people into the possibilities of what can be achieved with a different government in a very, very different atmosphere and a very, very different world. I don't want this country to be one that's more and more unequal, that has trade deals with Donald Trump that will be deeply damaging to our society. I don't want a society dominated by the far right or the right in any other form. What I want to see is a society that proudly cares for all and invests in the future for all. If you're up for that, get involved in the campaign. If you're up for that, above all, push for a general election and we'll go forward. And you know what? We can win it. Thank you. Can I make one little announcement to you? Can you all get your mobile phones out? Come on, I know you've all got them.
Jess, I think you've got to get yours out too.
See this one?
This is actually a mugging, so...
It's a mugging. You take over here.
Alright, so I need all of you to hold your phones up in the air. Do you